Maybe, Sumit, I would like to ask you to answer the next question because I think you are much more suitable for this.
Sure.
At what stage would you approach a startup scale up for any form of M&A? What are possible forms? Maybe we could start this discussion because I think the previous question, everybody agrees that this is, yes, we are in the era that innovation is going to happen between startups, scale-ups, and the corporates. There is no discussion about that. So let's go now. At which stage you will approach, and what are the forms?
Yeah, so I think just carrying on the point that was made earlier. I think it's important that the startups do not get completely, compromised on their evolution at an early stage, which does happen when you have a large corporation, entering at a very early stage. So this needs to be thought through very carefully. I think the problem we really see in many of the established corporates is departmental silos, and that sometimes alignment becomes a bit of a problem. So I would always recommend that we basically look at maybe a slightly more mature stage at which the entry should happen. You should basically be able to at least prove yourself. For example, in healthcare, one of the biggest challenges is clinical validation. Sometimes I've seen many startups do not have any doctors in their team, so they have no idea of what the problem is. They have guessed the problem and then found a solution for it. So they might need to get a little bit more validation done. I've been part of, juries where we evaluated startups, and I realized that one of the startups was actually talking about clinical grade validation of their IoT device. And we took them at face value and later realized that actually it was untrue. It was not really correct. And he made a big mistake. And many companies then, shy away from startups. So it's important that we, keep that sanctity, keep that integrity of what needs to be done, have that patience to build and test and prove yourself, because if you're able to get to a fairly mature stage, fairly I would say you can talk about stage where you've tested your pilot, tested your use case with at least one or two big let's say use cases, big corporates. It allows you to grow the way you want to. The sky is the limit in that sense. So it's important that you probably look at a slightly more mature stage before you actually take a decision of any strategic tie-up.
I agree fully with you. Let me summarize one more time. It is a very, very early stage acquisition or M&A. It is not considered from the corporates. You need to be in what is called scale-up stage or more mature stage to start discussing, to be taken serious. I would like to have one more of the panelists elaborating on this subject before we go to the next one. Maybe Swami would like to say something on this subject. Yes, please.
Yeah, I would say the answer would be it depends.
Okay.
And in J&J, we used to call ourselves a giant startup, but honestly, that's not true. We are a large ossified company, 130 years old. So I agree with all the criticism which gets leveled at the strategics. But what we did was about 10 years ago, we created innovation centers which were different from Johnson & Johnson. And these innovation centers were housed in universities where J&J invested significant amount of its own money to create labs and to invite startups to come in. And what J&J did was to provide them the support. And what we looked at was what was the impact that the startup was trying to do. And it did not necessarily be aligned with the strategic direction of J&J. It was more focused on the healthcare impact. And that's how we nurtured a lot of startups. Not necessarily all of them were in direction of J&J's strategy. We helped them for 1 or 2 years, and then we wanted them to move on because we don't want to create a support system for startup forever. You want them to grow beyond whatever early help they need. So we have nurtured small startups. At times they've gone on to be a part of Pfizer or Novartis or whatever because it was the right thing for them to do. But that strategy worked out really well for us. And now we have close to maybe 14 or 15 innovation ecosystems across the world where we invite the startups. We don't take decision about who should win the entry into that innovation system, but we provide them all the support in terms of guidance, not just the lab support, the wet labs or dry labs, depending upon where they are, but we also give them guidance for innovation in terms of business development, IP protection, bringing in some speakers from J&J or outside of J&J to help the startups grow. and build the business which would help them flourish. And we do large scale acquisitions like a $30 billion acquisition, but we also do small scale acquisitions. And the answer again, it depends. I buy the criticism, but not completely.
Okay, very good. Excellent to have different opinions. I would like to stop with our own questions, and I would like to go to questions of participants. And I will be selective for questions we have already answered. We will not go. So I go to the first one. Imagine your company or partner would love to invest 5 million in a digital healthcare business in a Series A. It is given that the business model is based on scalable software solution. What are your two most important criteria to make decision besides scalability? We cannot answer five of you in this question. I would like to only one person to answer. Maybe Pinak, you are the right guy to answer this question. Would you like?
Certainly, Mike. So I think there are two very distinct criteria. One, of course, is what is the eminent need that the software is trying to solve, and that is something which is extremely critical, as we call it. What is the value proposition for the customer, and how sticky would that value proposition be, is something which is super critical for us. And second, of course, is the fact that what is the moat? How difficult is it to try and breach the moat?
Okay, thank you very much. Now I go to the next question, which is how do business owners, CEOs, etc., raise awareness of the advantages of big businesses partnering with smaller business? How do we create this awareness, right? That many of the startup owners feel that the big businesses, they are not making the effort to connect together and create a better 1 + 1 3 or 1 + 1 5. I don't say all this, but apparently in certain areas must be the case. Who would like to answer this question? How to create more awareness to the innovation, to the big companies about the innovation with startups and scale-ups? Our discussion. Who would like to take this?
So I'll take this. I think to me, the main thing here is to, as the point was made earlier about culture, we have to have some kind of a, marriage of culture, and sometimes it's very difficult to change an organizational culture. So it's best to have a separate innovation team. I think J&J has shown that in an experiment. We also have Philips and a couple of other companies that have done quite well. We do see a fair amount of, ecosystem around that, because you do need that environment for a startup to thrive, and you need to have maybe some, fashion parades, some, kind of specific days on which you call startups and invite some of the organizational top brass to understand the innovation. But you give a culture, you give a support for that culture to thrive, and you then invite them at the right time to basically provide, say, funding support or whatever is required at that point of time. So I think it's a mix of both. But I would actually say that it's important that we consider the culture aspect and probably create a different team, which maybe derived from the Gen X, Gen Y. So more the Gen Ys, the more younger, innovative people who can then help drive and leverage the startups well, and then introduce them to the organization at.
Okay, thank you, Sumit. I think the question goes more, how do we create awareness with the corporates, right? Is there anything that we could do it as a, not as an individual startup, but in general, what could be done to create this awareness about the collaboration that's going to create 1 + 1 5?
I think probably only one point I'll say is, if you basically can have some specific days, innovation days, in which most startups or a particular sector participate, and we invite companies there, and you probably get some good pilots to happen as per their business problems. They could share their problems, and then the startup solves that problem.
Yeah, maybe I'd like to chime in a little bit, wearing my previous procurement hat when I was working for Bayer in China, where we actually set up what we call the supplier day every year. So we basically invite everybody, or even send an invitation publicly to anybody who has an idea, who can help us to solve a problem. So then we have a large audience coming from a diversified background, and they will try to hear our pain and understanding our challenges and trying to work together as a game and to solve our problem. And that's another time when a particular company can outshine the other or showcase their technology and be known and work through a bigger name brand like J&J or Bayer, and as a way to market your technology and to be let known to a wider public. I think that's one way to do.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you. Yes, so yes, go ahead.
I want to jump in regarding the question of how to build up awareness for a startup company for their newly innovative product. So one of the suggestions, just one idea is, because this is a healthcare product, it needs to be proven by the clinical evidence. So if your innovative product can convince some of the key opinion leaders in the hospitals and proven it's successful, then those key opinion leaders will speak for you. They will tell those Medtronic, J&J, say, hey, there's a new technology, why don't you consider about that? So I think that this is a very good way to let the big companies, big guys know what are you doing, how efficiently you can provide the solution.
Okay, good, great,
Mike,
great idea. Go ahead,
Mike,
Vinay.
just one small point, and
Yes.
it is an interesting point because a lot of at least 2 or 3 of the larger strategic are now partnering with funds like ours to have a peek into what's going into the market. So they actually are LPs of ours to see how they can leverage some of these startups at an early stage.
Very good. Yes,
So that's-
there is a lot of collaboration. There are a lot of collaborations happening at this moment. So you need to be
Yeah.
more open, participate in events, be outwards focused to be able to connect with this ecosystem. I think that's
so-
the
so-
message.
I just
Yes.
want to add one more as a banker, again, wearing my
Yes,
banker
yes.
hat. Well, obviously, our purpose as a banker is to help both sides to be connected. So if a small startup couldn't figure out how to get themselves, or raise the awareness, they can always find a local banker to help them out. So then we can then connect them to the right people. And that's
Yes.
part of the service that we offer. That's it.
Yeah. In the era of the customer or the information era, there are so many ways to connect. You need to look for. That's a bit the message that all of you bring. Okay, one more question, and then we go back to our own questions, and then we'll come back to the questions of the participants. A very practical one. For a UK registered company, would need to set up a separate, they would like to set up a separate entity in Southeast Asia in order to receive investment from a corporate organization. Is this something that is feasible? I think practically that's the question. A UK company would like to receive investment from a corporate in Southeast Asia. Setting up an entity there, is that a way to go? Pinak, maybe you or anyone who has experience on this.
See, I can talk about
Please.
Indian context. Maybe.
Yeah, okay. Yes.
So the similarity is that yes, you can. In fact, we encourage the UK company to set up a JV partnership or a wholly owned subsidiary in India, and that will help. At least from a regulatory standpoint, a lot of things get ironed out if the large corporation is actually based out of India and is wanting to invest in the Indian entity. I'm sure in Singapore that could be also the same case. At least we have had some of the interactions with the Singapore entities, and it's much easier to do an investment in Singapore, and the tax laws are quite favorable.
Thank you. I have also some similar experience. Yes, setting up an entity helps, but also the setting up only the entity might not be enough. You need to have also some activity, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not just a shell entity; it needs to show business there.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I would like to go to the next question, which is becomes a bit more juicy. How can corporate startup partnerships in addressing healthcare crisis in Asia? So we go something more practical now. I mean, doing this partnership, this collaboration, even M&A to address crisis in Asia. Any example? Any of you, would you like to say something? I mean, the question about Asia can be also Europe or US. Asia is maybe because it has more developing countries, right? So that's a bit the story.
I think one of the things which I can start off is the lung cancer crisis in China, right? So that was taken up as a huge cross-sector initiative by Johnson & Johnson. And it helped draw attention to the issue. And across different businesses, people approached it very differently. Right from starting from how do you take people away from nicotine? Because smoking is a huge thing in China, to how do you treat lung cancer? Do you treat it with a pharmaceutical compound? Do you treat it with a surgery, a thoracic surgery, or even through an ablation? And one extreme example which I can think of is we acquired a US company out of University of Wisconsin. It was a small startup with hardly $2 million in sales. But what we discovered was RF ablation, radio frequency ablation for lung cancer was huge in China. And this particular company had microwave ablation, which was much more precise and targeted. So we specifically acquired a company in US to see if we could solve the China problem. So just raising the awareness of it's not such a big deal in many other parts of the world, but it is a huge thing in China. And what can we do to really combine all the different ways in which we can solve the problem that helped us in terms of trying to address that issue from a China perspective.
Good. Any other example? Excellent. Thank you, Swami. That's very practical. And I know we talk about, I don't know, 800 million, 1 billion people, and many smokers in China. I don't know if it's reducing. I mean, I've not been for 3-4 years, but
it is reducing. Yeah.
It is reducing. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I guess not only smoking, but also pollution. That's also the secondary cause of that.
Good. Okay. Any other example? How can these partnerships the healthcare address the healthcare crisis? I mean, even COVID. Any example from COVID? Because some of the participants wants to ask questions about COVID. Is this So any other example?
Well, there are lots of companies who are operating in many different sphere, different sector, but because of the COVID, they turn their factory into making, oxygen machine and things like that, and then ship out to India and elsewhere. Again, that's another business model. They have a certain channel. They used to be selling something completely different commodity worldwide, but all of a sudden the crisis impended on them to be a producer of the certain machine, respiratory machine, because they happen to have the capacity in China to do so. And I think there are many examples that many companies are very successful during the pandemic, and or a certain company maybe even went belly up, but then this pandemic gave them the opportunity to be a manufacturer of another thing, which they are totally capable. And this is the same thing that we have seen GE Healthcare in China has been able to turn around to also produce something they have to discontinue many years ago.
Mike, similar example in India where one of the largest car manufacturers in the country, Maruti Suzuki, they partnered with a startup which was manufacturing ventilators, and put up an entire ventilator assembly line during the COVID pandemic to manufacture at scale the ventilators, and that was a very unique thing. It was done for the first time by a non-healthcare corporation to actually partner with a healthcare startup to leverage their manufacturing skills.
Brilliant.
Yeah, very good.
One thing which I can add is, very early on in the pandemic, especially in US, when we were running short of ventilators, we developed with FDA the ventilator splitters and got that approved very quickly. So one ventilator could then serve 2 patients. And that's how we we did not need it after 3 months, but at least in those first 3 months, it was very useful.
It's definitely, and that could be also exported to other parts of the world, right? So
Yeah.
because then the business is global, right? Okay, I have one question here. I go back to the questions because it's very relevant. It says, COVID has pushed health systems to postpone or cancel non-essential, non-critical tests and procedures. And most of these health systems were already 20 years behind in innovation. Do you see this as an opportunity or threat to advancing health innovation? Any takeaway?
So I think I'll go first.
Please.
COVID has suddenly given a fillip to the entire health tech digital healthcare market. I think across India and Southeast Asia, there is no two doubts about it. I'm sure it's global. You could see similar trends in the US. What it has done is that legacy healthcare delivery systems in India, it has shaken them up and made them aware of their limitations in terms of outreach in a lockdown situation. What it also means is that they are now, and I'll give you the example of Apollo Hospitals, which is the #1 healthcare chain in India, which is now focusing significantly on an omni-channel strategy. And they are looking at their Apollo 24/7, which actually has a digital outreach, a physical outreach, and virtual outreach. So all of that combined together is what Apollo is trying to get into. So legacy systems will have to change. There is no two doubts about that.
Any second opinion on the subject?
I think all the elective procedures have bounced back after the first impact of COVID, which probably lasted a quarter to 2 quarters. In most parts of the world, many of the elective procedures have bounced back and have started doing better than before. So I think innovation will continue. There will be setbacks, but I don't think humanity will allow those setbacks to be forever setbacks.
You're right. We are moving forward always. That's what's
Yeah.
happening with the humanity. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Swami,
Let's go. Go
I
ahead.
tend to agree with you. The only place where the difference of opinion is, no doubt about the fact that non-emergency is returning back. I'm just making, it is just making the traditional healthcare providers aware of their limitations.
Yeah.
And their requirement to move ahead with the new age technology.
They are innovating. Yeah.